There's a new me coming out, and I just have to live, and I wanna give. I'm completely positive. I think this time around I am gonna do it like you never knew it. Oh, I'll make it through. The time has come for me to break out of the shell. I have to shout that I am coming out. I'm coming out. I want the world to know.
Welcome to the show, Never Too Late Ever, where we focus on making the next chapter of your life the very best chapter ever. I am your host, Lorraine Hoving, and I am so glad you are joining us today. This day will change your life. Open your heart, open your ears, and listen. You will find a gem, a treasure that you can apply to your life today. And today I'm so excited to have the guest that we had last week, Karen Worstell. Hi, Karen. How are you doing today?
Hi, Lorraine. I'm doing great. It's wonderful to be back.
So Karen knows everything about tech. So last week we talked how her brother brought a computer, a TRX, in 1984, correct?
Yeah, TRS-80. Yep.
Yes. Oh. And this was a pivot in her life. And so she became a serial chief information security officer for iconic companies across industry sectors and as a Silicon Valley technology leader. Her company, W Risk Group, provides both cybersecurity consulting and immersive group coaching intensives called MOJO Maker for Women in Tech to help companies retain their female brain trust. Karen lives in Denver. She moved there about 3 years ago, and she has 2 children. So welcome, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And today our show is called The Heroine's Journey. And this is about a movie that Karen has watched with her granddaughter. Yes. How many grandchildren?
I have 4 grandkids. All they're 5 and under.
Oh, wonderful. That makes Christmas absolutely joyous, doesn't it?
Well, we get to watch a lot of great movies. I have to say, one of them is quite a movie aficionado. So,
okay. So this story today is about how Moana and Mara Nui inspired us. Yep. Inspired a second career. The story of Moana is a brilliant Disney animated movie. And I just told her I haven't watched it yet, but believe you me, I'm going to. It's about a Polynesian teenager overcoming obstacles and barriers into the vast unknown of the sea to follow her heart's call. Remember last week we talked about listening to your heart whispers, into the classic structure of the hero's journey. Karen has watched it many times with her granddaughter, and its message gave her the framework for her coaching practice. So tell us a little bit about your coaching practice and how that movie helped with your framework.
Sure. Well, I started a coaching practice based on my experience. I don't think we've talked about, but my experience as a chaplain, which I did
Wow.
a different part of my life, and my experience as a woman in the technology industry. And after watching this movie, I watched it several times with my little granddaughter Piper, and I realized I love the music. It's there's a lot of great Disney songs in it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And as I was sitting on the plane one day, and I was like, okay, I'm going to memorize all these songs because Piper and I need to sing them together. And as I'm going down looking at the titles of the songs in the order of the movie, I realized that the movie was patterned after what Joseph Campbell called the hero's journey.
Mm-hmm.
And it has to do with there's a precipitating event. There's a precipitating event that happens that realizes that life is not going to be the same as it was before. the hero, because of this precipitating event, or a heroine in this case, sets out on a quest, essentially. And all along the way, they meet with a number of events that I call them threshold guardians. There's an archetypal form that's in the hero's journey called a threshold guardian. And it's the job of the heroine to either do one of four things. You go around it, you can somehow bypass that. You can outrun it, you can outwit it, or you can fail. Those are the four choices.
Outrun it, outwit it, or you can fail. How about, can you go through it? Can you go through it?
Yeah, you can go through it. You can destroy it, essentially.
Okay.
Right? You can destroy it so that you can go past it, over, around it, under it, or through it, but you can destroy it. You can outrun it, outwit it, or you can fail.
Mm-hmm.
And those are the only four options. And so over and over again in this movie, you see how these thresholds appear to her, and she decides, she takes some action. And all four of those are represented in the movie. The trick is that you learn from each one of those encounters, because whenever you encounter this threshold, the purpose of it is to prepare you for what comes next. So these thresholds are never the end of the story. They're just an episode in the story. And what you take from that encounter with the threshold is what you take into the next part of your journey. And this happens all the way through, like, the second part of the hero's journey. And by the time you get to the third part of the hero's journey, which is what they call redemption or resolution, you have taken all of these skills and attributes that you learned along the way and applied them, and you come back changed, you come back transformed, and you come back to convey that information to the rest of your community.
Right.
Yep.
So how has that been helpful? How has that been so helpful to you? Personalize it a bit.
I think that the thing that has been so most important for me and for the women, I think, that are in our coaching program, is that you realize that life doesn't happen to you, it happens for you.
Mm-hmm. Explain that a little. I know what that means, but explain that to somebody who's maybe not heard that phrase. It happens for you.
Well, we're never, it changes everything. It's the optimistic way of looking at a lot of things. It changes it from, this isn't happening to me. I'm not the helpless victim or recipient of this. I am learning from this, and I'm taking what this is teaching me and going on to the next step, the next leg of my incredible journey. Right.
And that is the good or bad that happens in life. We might call it bad. Like, for instance, as you might know, my husband had prostate cancer surgery just on Monday. Today's Thursday, so we're now home resting. But I think that if we realize that things, if we don't play the victim, like, oh, poor me, why did this happen? Well, why not? We're here in life and things happen. But if you realize that it happened for our own good in some ways, we are stronger, we are better because of it. We've had people pray, we've just had an army of people around us. And so often we think, poor me, why did this happen? But instead, look for the good, the optimistic that Karen talks about. Is that kind of what you're speaking of?
Yeah, I think that it's like, what am I taking from this?
Right.
So
exactly.
often when we're faced with terrible adversity, that is when we also find out how strong we really are.
And it amazes you. Yeah. It amazes yourself when you go, wow, I didn't know.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. That, that which doesn't kill you makes you stronger is another way to look at it. Right. But honestly, you find out how resourceful you are. You find out that there are people out there. You find out the goodness in other people, the people who are there for you. You find, you just tap into resources. My sister, as an example, kinds of adversity when she was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer, 7 years, almost more than 7 years ago now.
And she's still alive?
She's not only alive, she is one of the leading cancer patient advocates in the world.
See,
for lung cancer.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah. And we just don't, it's like, we just really don't know what that next stage brings us. We just know that this thing is happening to us. And if we actually just hold out the belief and the expectation that this is happening for us and that there's going to be things from this that we're going to learn that we never would have learned otherwise, it transforms the experience and the adversity into something that says, yes, it's hard. I wish, there's lots of reasons why I would wish that this wouldn't have happened, but it has happened.
Right.
And so where do we go now? Where do we go from here?
Right. And you look at it and at first, there's always a little bit of shock, but then when you start looking, you can find little silver lining around everything. You really, really can. And I love that story with your sister. Is it your sister that had the 4th stage? Yeah. Now that's an amazing story, because usually 4th stage lung cancer is you don't usually come back from that. So an amazing story. So I love that. So that's kind of how you deal with barriers and adversity, by just digging deep and being optimistic. Is that what your experience is? You dig deep and find out what you're made of.
Yeah, well, and I think it's like, okay, what's next?
Right.
I remember when my husband, who was working for a very large bank, and they made an acquisition. This was back in the banking crisis that we had about a decade ago.
Right.
And he had been working for them for 10 years, and he got swept up in the massive layoffs that happened in that whole time period. And he literally at 8:30 in the morning I walked into his office. He was taking his headset off, and it was very uncharacteristic for him to be looking at me this way. I said, "What happened?" And he goes, I just lost my job effective today."
Wow.
And I just kind of looked at him and I'm like, wow, like that came out of the blue, like out of nowhere. And he goes, "This is going to be an adventure."
Right. Well, amazing. Yeah. It's amazing he had that attitude right away. Sometimes it takes you a while to get there. And then you realize, well, when a door closes like that and you have no control of it, then there must be something better beyond that. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that came out of Sound of Music when God shuts a door somewhere, a window opens.
Yeah.
Yeah. I probably saw that at a point in my life where that really stuck with me.
Right. Now, in your coaching practice, you developed a process to help clients overcome personal obstacles. Can you tell us a little bit about that? The method.
Right. So in the hero's journey, there's kind of a 5-step process we condensed down into 3. But it's really to know who you are, know where you are and where you are going. Understand who's in your boat, because this is a water story, right? On Moana, and know how to navigate your way home. And that is the 5-part story of Moana. And we just basically said, we kind of collapsed that and said, you need to know yourself. We have a whole set of practices and things we teach so that people really know who they are. That comes from my own personal experience as well as a chaplain. which if we have time, I can get into it. But the second part